handwriting recognition. Scribble a word and see converted into text.
With scooters from Segway Discovery.
The 2000s were a thrilling era of boundary-pushing innovation, when tech companies dared to dream big, disrupt markets, and reimagine the future. But not all those daring ventures hit the mark. Some flopped because they were too advanced for their time, while others simply left consumers scratching their heads. From futuristic gadgets to radical redesigns, join us as we explore Part 2 of 25 innovative products from the 2000s that failed miserably. Launched in 2006, the Microsoft Zune was Redmond's ambitious attempt to challenge Apple's iPod dominance. While technically sound, with a larger screen, built-in FM radio, and wireless sharing, the Zune stumbled out of the gate due to a late market entry and weak branding. The infamous brown model became a punchline rather than a trendsetter.
The Zune was like such an underappreciated, underloved. It was just the best music player of the time.
Zune's proprietary software was sluggish and less intuitive compared to iTunes, and Microsoft's marketing lacked the cultural spark Apple had with iPod's silhouette ads. Despite future updates and the improved Zune HD, it never gained traction. Ultimately discontinued in 2012, the Zune is now a case study in how being good enough isn't enough when the competition defines the category. While Microsoft tried to take on the iPod with the Zune, could an entirely different mode of transport suffer a similar fate? Few products have generated as much pre-launch buzz as the Segway PT, codenamed Ginger. Introduced in 2001 with claims it would revolutionize personal transportation, the Segway was an electric self-balancing scooter meant to replace walking. Instead, it became an overhyped oddity.
At Segway, we know commercial equipment dealers respect our commitment to innovation and quality, as well as appreciate that the PT is rugged, functional, and highly efficient.
Priced around $5,000, it was too expensive for casual users and too impractical for urban environments due to sidewalk regulations and safety concerns. The sight of mall cops and tourists using them only added to its image problem. With only about 140,000 units sold over 2 decades, Segway ended production in 2020. The product's futuristic design couldn't overcome its real-world limitations or justify its utopian promises. Apple's original Newton from the 1990s was a pioneer of handheld computing, but when whispers of a 2000s relaunch surfaced, tech watchers were intrigued. In the early 2000s, Apple reportedly explored reviving the Newton concept with better touch interfaces and tighter OS integration. However, the ghost of its original failure, poor handwriting recognition and high price, still lingered. Internally, the project competed with what would eventually become the iPhone, and Steve Jobs famously disliked the Newton, having scrapped it after returning to Apple.
Portable being an interesting word, it's kind of big. It's an ancestor to the iPhone. Some say it was ahead of its time, some just call it a failure.
Ultimately, the relaunch never happened formally, but many concepts re-emerged in later Apple devices. The failed resurrection attempt only further sealed Newton's legacy as a brilliant idea that never got its execution right. In the late 1990s, Sony unveiled the world's first robotic pet, AIBO, short for Artificial Intelligence Robot, and by 2000, the first-generation AIBO had entered the market with a hefty $2,000 price tag. Despite initial excitement and sellout batches, AIBO struggled to find a mainstream purpose.
You'll see this kind of pet robot is staying at the home. Not only one, but the 2, 3, 4, 5 robots will be moving in each home.
It was more novelty than utility. The robotic dog could walk, respond to voice commands, and develop behavior patterns, but it lacked genuine companionship or productivity features. The high cost, limited interaction capabilities, and lack of long-term software support made it a luxury toy for tech enthusiasts rather than a household staple. Production was halted in 2006. While later versions would reappear years later, the first-gen AIBO became a symbol of cool tech with no clear function. Imagine wearing a smartwatch in 2004. Microsoft made that possible with the Spot, Smart Personal Object Technology watch. Years ahead of its time, it delivered news, weather, stock updates, and more via FM radio signals.
You know, the original Pebble was a little bit curved, and so it threw off a little bit more glare. Sometimes the analog, to me, when I was using it, felt like more of a regular watch display.
However, the Spot watch quickly ran into problems. It required a $59-a-year MSN direct subscription, had a clunky design, limited functionality, and slow data updates. Competing devices like cell phones and later smartphones rapidly rendered it obsolete. Battery life was mediocre, and the display struggled in sunlight. Though it showcased Microsoft's vision of ambient computing, Spot was simply too early and too limited. Discontinued by 2008, it remains a cautionary tale of tech innovation that arrives before the ecosystem and the world is ready. Microsoft's early smartwatch aimed to keep users connected, but did other mobile-focused devices succeed where it didn't? When Nokia combined gaming and mobile communication in 2003 with the N-Gage, it sounded like a revolutionary hybrid. Unfortunately, the execution was baffling. The device's taco phone shape made phone calls awkward. You had to hold it sideways to your head. Game cartridges were tricky to insert, requiring battery removal. The library of games was weak, and graphics lagged behind handheld consoles like the Game Boy Advance.
You can see there are plenty of utility apps that were built into the operating system. And the N-Gage QD had its own N-Gage-esque theme to it, with orange and grays all around.
Despite Nokia's dominance in mobile at the time, the N-Gage sold poorly, with fewer than 3 million units moved globally. Even the N-Gage QD redesign couldn't revive interest. By 2005, it was effectively dead. The N-Gage now serves as a prime example of how cramming two devices into one can result in the worst of both. The Motorola ROKR E1 made history in 2005 as the first phone to feature iTunes support, thanks to a partnership with Apple. But instead of making waves, it flopped spectacularly. Limited to just 100 iTunes songs regardless of storage capacity, the phone was sluggish with painfully slow sync speeds. It looked like a generic candy bar phone and lacked the style or functionality of Apple's later iPhone. Steve Jobs was reportedly unimpressed with Motorola's hardware, and users agreed. It felt like a missed opportunity. The ROKR's failure pushed Apple to take complete control and develop the iPhone in-house. While historically significant, the ROKR E1 is remembered more as a cautionary misstep than a music phone milestone. Motorola's first iTunes phone stumbled on limits. Would a high-definition format war prove more decisive in the tech battles of the 2000s? In the battle for next-gen home video formats, HD DVD entered the scene in 2006 as the main rival to Sony's Blu-ray. Backed by Toshiba and supported by Microsoft, HD DVD had a head start and even cost advantages.
Oh, great! HD lost the battle to Blu-ray. That HD player I have is going to be so great now. I feel like a dip.
It was used in the Xbox 360's external drive and supported by major studios like Universal and Paramount. However, Blu-ray quickly gained ground, thanks to broader support from electronics manufacturers, the inclusion in PlayStation 3, and greater storage capacity per disc. By early 2008, Warner Bros. Dropped HD DVD in favor of Blu-ray, triggering a domino effect. Toshiba officially pulled the plug shortly after. Despite strong early momentum, HD DVD failed due to strategic missteps, limited support, and losing the format war. Back in 2002, Pepsi decided to shake things up, literally, with the introduction of Pepsi Blue, a bright, berry-flavored soda that looked more like mouthwash than a beverage. Marketed toward teenagers with extreme sports ads and pop culture tie-ins, it initially attracted attention with its shocking electric blue color. However, things soured fast. Consumers found the flavor, reminiscent of cotton candy or liquid bubblegum, overwhelming and artificial.
I'm trying to detect the difference between regular Pepsi and this. It has some kind of extra taste.
Critics labeled it a gimmick rather than a serious product, and its association with the early 2000s overload of neon branding didn't help. Sales fizzled, and by 2004 it was pulled from U.S. shelves. While it resurfaced in limited re-releases later, Pepsi Blue remains a classic case of over-marketing and under-delivering on taste. Even some of the most trusted brands make questionable leaps, and Colgate's frozen lasagna is a prime example. Best known for toothpaste and oral care, Colgate bizarrely ventured into the frozen food aisle in the early 2000s, launching Colgate Kitchen Entrees. The idea of a company associated with minty freshness making savory pasta dishes didn't sit well with consumers. Psychological dissonance played a massive role. No one wanted to associate dinner with toothpaste.
Now, do you all remember like the fat-free Pringles and the Heinz ketchup, the green ketchup, and then the Colgate lasagna? I just don't understand that, yeah.
Despite efforts to market the meals as convenient and wholesome, the branding was too jarring to overcome. Sales were minimal, and the product quickly disappeared. Colgate lasagna now stands as a cautionary marketing legend. No matter the product's quality, brand identity can make or break its success. There was a time when Microsoft tried to break into the teen mobile market with its very own social phone, the Kin. Released in 2010, after years of development and the acquisition of Danger Inc.,
So today, I want to introduce you to the newest member of the Windows Phone family, Kin, a phone designed to navigate your social life.
Maker of the Sidekick, the Kin 1 and Kin 2 were aimed at the social media savvy generation. Unfortunately, both devices flopped spectacularly. They lacked app support, struggled with basic smartphone functions, and required expensive Verizon data plans despite being underpowered. The interface was unique, but confusing, and syncing content was a hassle. The worst part, Microsoft pulled the Kin from shelves just 6 weeks after launch. Despite innovative features like Kin Studio for cloud backup, the product failed due to poor positioning and rushed execution. Microsoft's Kin struggled to find its audience, but how did a once iconic smartphone maker fare when transitioning to touchscreens? When BlackBerry attempted to rival the iPhone with its first touchscreen phone, the Storm, in 2008, expectations were sky high. Unfortunately, the execution fell flat. BlackBerry's signature keyboard was replaced with a Sure Press clickable screen that attempted to mimic tactile feedback, but it proved awkward and sluggish. The operating system wasn't optimized for touch navigation, leading to buggy performance and crashes.
Is they've made the whole screen a great big button. It's difficult to see at this distance, but as I push on that screen, the screen itself moves.
Additionally, it lacked Wi-Fi, a huge omission even in 2008. Critics panned its confusing interface and inconsistent responsiveness. Despite strong sales driven by loyal BlackBerry users and aggressive carrier promotion, customer dissatisfaction was rampant. The Storm was supposed to usher in a new era for BlackBerry, but it instead marked the beginning of its long decline in the smartphone race. In 2007, Palm, a pioneer in personal digital assistance, introduced the Folio, a device they called a mobile companion. It looked like a tiny laptop, but was designed specifically to pair with Palm smartphones for tasks like email and document editing. Instead of using Windows or Linux, it ran a custom Linux-based OS, which limited its compatibility and appeal. Priced at $499, it lacked built-in cellular connectivity and couldn't function independently of a smartphone. Critics couldn't understand its purpose. Was it a laptop replacement or a smartphone accessory?
We believe this is really a beginning of a whole new wave of finally and truly making the mobile device that's in your pocket your primary PC.
Just weeks before its planned release, Palm abruptly canceled the Folio. It was ahead of its time in trying to bridge mobile and portable computing, but unclear functionality and poor market timing doomed it. The Zeo Sleep Monitor promised to revolutionize your nights by offering a deep look into your sleep cycles.
Millions of Americans fail to get enough sleep. We know a lot about that. They've created an innovative new device that measures how well a person sleeps. The best part?
Released in the late 2000s, it featured a headband with the sensors that recorded brainwave activity, syncing to a bedside display and smartphone app to chart light, deep, and REM sleep.
This thing isn't gonna zap me or something, is it?
No, chillax. It's called the Zeo, and actually it's like a sleep laboratory built right into this alarm clock.
And what's the point?
It measures your brainwaves.
It was a novel concept, and early adopters praised its science-driven approach.
It has helped me to identify the things that I can change to improve my quality of sleep.
However, it struggled with mainstream adoption. The headband was uncomfortable for many, the data complex for casual users, and competition from simpler fitness trackers grew rapidly. Zeo also failed to build a sustainable revenue model beyond initial device sales. By 2013, the company shut down quietly, leaving many with unusable hardware. Despite its innovation, Zeo proved too niche to survive. Keurig aimed to replicate its coffee pod success with the 2015 launch of the Keurig Cold, a machine designed to make single-serve cold beverages, including sodas, at home.
The company is launching its newest machine today. It's called the Keurig Cold, but instead of filling coffee in your cup, you can actually brew your own Coca-Cola.
The idea sounded futuristic. Insert a pod, and out comes chilled carbonated Coke or Dr. Pepper. But problems popped up fast. The machine cost a whopping $369, took several minutes to make each drink, and the pods were more expensive than buying soda from the store. Users also found the drinks lacked authentic taste and fizz. The machine was loud, large, and consumed significant energy for such a small yield. Within a year, Keurig discontinued Cold, absorbing a substantial financial hit. It was an ambitious idea undone by poor execution and flawed economics. Keurig's cold beverage machine fizzled fast. Did Microsoft's operating system struggle similarly when it hit the mainstream? When Microsoft released Windows Vista in 2007, it was billed as a sleek, secure successor to Windows XP.
Stunning flip 3D and live thumbnails that let you quickly sort through tasks at a glance. Windows Vista also makes browsing through your file folders easier.
But instead of applause, it received widespread backlash. The system was resource-intensive, making it sluggish on older PCs. Users complained about compatibility issues, constant user account control prompts, and poor driver support. Vista's Aero interface looked modern but required high-end graphics, which many machines at the time couldn't handle smoothly. Businesses and everyday users stuck with XP, forcing Microsoft to fast-track the release of Windows 7. While Vista introduced some valuable back-end improvements, like better security and search, it was the clunky user experience that overshadowed them. Ultimately, Vista became a symbol of software overreach that failed to meet user expectations. In a bold attempt to enter the internet appliance market, Sony launched the eVilla in 2001, a sleek, all-in-one device that combined web browsing, email, media playback, and basic productivity features.
Take a look at Sony's eVilla. It was this sort of handheld but also desktop portable internet entertainment console.
Marketed as a simple internet terminal for non-tech savvy users, it ran on BEOS and featured a vertical monitor, built-in keyboard, and dial-up modem. Despite the promise of ease, the eVilla was hampered by its sluggish performance, inability to install new software, lack of broadband support, and a steep $500 price tag. Consumers quickly realized they could buy a complete PC for slightly more. Just 2 months after release, Sony discontinued it and offered refunds. The eVilla now lives on as a lesson in how oversimplifying tech can lead to irrelevance. Sega's Dreamcast was ahead of its time when it launched in 1999, featuring online play, a VMU memory unit, and arcade-quality graphics. But by the mid-2000s, as the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube gained dominance, Dreamcast's life cycle came to a premature end. Sega's poor financial health, lack of strong third-party developer support, and marketing misfires contributed to the downfall. Although cult classics like Shenmue and Jet Set Radio made it beloved among gamers, it wasn't enough to sustain momentum.
So stick around afterwards and play some Shenmue, which is like a giant expansion pack tacked on to Space Harrier for the Sega Dreamcast.
In 2001, Sega announced it would exit the hardware market altogether. Despite a strong start and genuine innovation, Dreamcast's failure during its final phase became one of gaming's most dramatic collapses, ending Sega's console-making era for good. Long before the iPhone or even the iPod, Apple tried to enter the gaming and multimedia space with the Pippin.
Mark, we've got a Pippin right over here, and when you just look at it, it kind of looks like a video game console. You've got it plugged into a TV set, you've got a kind of game controller, but it is a lot more than that, isn't it?
Launched in 1996, but discontinued by the early 2000s, this obscure device was co-developed with Bandai and aimed to merge computing and console gaming. With a $599 price tag, limited software library, sluggish performance, and unclear market identity, the Pippin was an awkward hybrid.
Pippin is an interesting example of a device that would let you, for $500, $600, run all of the Mac software on a television.
It lacked the power and exclusives of rivals like Sony's PlayStation, as well as the accessibility of PC platforms. Distribution was minimal, and even Apple seemed unsure how to support it. Selling fewer than 50,000 units globally, the Pippin is now considered one of Apple's worst flops. Ironically, it hinted at convergence years before Apple mastered it elsewhere. If Nightmares had a product endorsement, it might be the Rejuvenique facial toning mask. Released in the early 2000s and endorsed by Linda Evans, this beauty device, with a horror movie-esque design, claimed to stimulate facial muscles using electric pulses to reduce wrinkles.
You have an idea what Rejuvenique would do for your face. Because in essence, Rejuvenique does for the face what exercise does for the body. And the way it does that is there's a control unit that during a facial session,
users strapped on a rigid plastic mask embedded with electrodes and endured a series of zaps to supposedly tone and tighten facial skin. However, most users reported discomfort, confusion, and negligible results. Reviews often focused more on the terrifying appearance than effectiveness, and many experienced skin irritation or even minor burns. Despite its infomercial popularity, the Rejuvenique failed to gain legitimacy in the beauty tech world. It now exists as a cult oddity, often remembered more for memes than miracles. One of the strangest tech flops of the early 2000s, the QCat was a handheld barcode scanner designed to connect your physical world to the digital one. Shaped like a sleek plastic feline, the device allowed users to scan specially printed barcodes from magazines, directing them to associated web pages.
He started scanning his pantry. The QCat could read the UPC code on everything from coffee to bologna, and instantly took his computer deep past company homepages.
Distributed for free by Radio Shack and even mailed to subscribers of Wired, it was supposed to revolutionize media interaction. But privacy concerns exploded. QCats transmitted serial numbers tied to user identities. Moreover, users preferred not to scan barcodes, as typing a URL was faster. The concept was over-engineered for a problem that didn't exist. By 2001, QCat's parent company, Digital Convergence, had collapsed, and the device entered internet infamy.
But that's not really true. As if this is what you're looking at, it is a perfectly usable barcode scanner.
Ultimately, barcodes were no longer distributed for the device, and scanning with the device using its original software no longer yielded results. Attempting to challenge Apple's iPod Shuffle, Dell introduced the DJ Ditty in 2005, a compact, screenless MP3 player with 500 MB of flash storage.
The Dell Digital Jukebox, or the Dell DJ. This is a 15 gigabyte spinning disc audio player
Despite Dell's dominance in PCs, the Ditty failed to generate interest. It lacked standout features, suffered from clunky syncing software, and couldn't match the iPod's ecosystem or user-friendliness. Battery life and sound quality were average, and its minimalistic design didn't excite buyers.
Reveled in the newest technology and the coolest creations, and honestly, some of the greatest computers of that time.
By the time of its release, Apple had already captured the portable music market with an unbeatable combination of sleek design, branding, and iTunes integration. The Ditty was discontinued just months after launch. Even within Dell's product line, it's often forgotten, serving as a reminder that brand strength in one category doesn't always translate to another. Marketed as the future of high-performance computing, Intel's Itanium processor line debuted in 2001 with massive ambitions.
Itanium will ring a bell? This was an all-new architecture and CPU brand from Intel that made its debut back in 2001.
Designed for enterprise servers, it introduced a new instruction set, architecture, IA64, intended to leap beyond x86 limitations. However, Itanium quickly ran into serious issues. The development was expensive, and the software struggled with compatibility, underperforming compared to expectations. Major industry players like Microsoft and Red Hat pulled support over time, and few developers bothered to optimize software for its complex architecture. Meanwhile, x86-64 chips like AMD's Opteron proved more practical and affordable. Intel continued development for nearly 2 decades, but Itanium never achieved mainstream traction. By 2021, production officially ended. Itanium's legacy is one of a grand vision crushed by market realism and better alternatives. Intel's Itanium was a high-profile flop. What about Theranos's promises of revolutionizing blood testing with a single device? Few tech failures were as infamous or dangerous as the Edison device from Theranos. Promised in the 2000s as a revolutionary portable machine capable of running hundreds of blood tests from a single finger prick, it captivated investors and media alike.
And you'll see the blood wick into the channels. The nanotainer tubes are then removed, and the sample can be processed immediately.
But beneath its sleek exterior, Edison was deeply flawed. It delivered inconsistent and inaccurate results and could only perform a small fraction of the tests it claimed. CEO Elizabeth Holmes raised over $700 million, but the deception unraveled when whistleblowers and journalists exposed the truth. By the mid-2010s, regulatory agencies intervened, and the company collapsed. The Edison device, once hailed as the future of diagnostics, became a cautionary tale of unchecked hype, scientific misconduct, and the dark side of Silicon Valley innovation. Long before the VR craze took hold, Nintendo attempted to pioneer the space with the Virtual Boy in 1995, but its failure echoed well into the 2000s. Marketed as a 3D gaming console, it used parallax to simulate depth via red and black stereoscopic visuals.
Virtual Boy, a 3D game for a 3D world.
Remember Nintendo's Virtual Boy? Probably not.
Virtual Boy, see it now in 3D.
However, the headset-style design caused discomfort, motion sickness, and eye strain in users. Games were limited, colorless, and lacked depth, ironically. Priced at $180, it was expensive, bulky, and offered a subpar experience compared to traditional consoles. Developers abandoned it, and just 22 games were ever released. By 1996, it was discontinued. Though not launched in the 2000s, its commercial failure and infamous reputation continued to haunt Nintendo's image into the new millennium.